We need a quorum on, do we need a quorum on both sides, a quorum on the committee, budget committee and a quorum of the board of directors?
My understanding is it's just the budget committee, which is made up of 9
Okay.
budget committee members and the board for a total of 18. So we
Okay.
just need a quorum there.
All right, sounds good. Just want to make sure we don't trip ourselves up.
We'll have a challenge when we get into the regular board meeting, however, if we don't have a quorum there.
Yeah, and I wanted to give you a preface that Terry Fitzpatrick is unable to go. He's got some issues, got a medical stuff going on.
Okay, well, since we have a quorum for the budget committee, I guess I'll call the budget committee to order. The first item on the agenda was approval of the budget minutes from the last meeting, including the written correspondence Q&A.
Make a motion to accept the minutes and supporting communications as presented.
Second,
Okay, with the motion and the second, I guess we'll put it to vote. I'm on an iPad and I'm used to being on a laptop, so I'm having a tougher time trying to figure out how we'll do the voting. If we could do the hands up, maybe.
Lisa Arkin will
Oh,
abstain.
real hands. You mean real hands?
I think either one. It depends on if the video is on. Yes, so we got.
Maybe let's see if there's any opposed. That might be easier.
Okay, is anyone opposed to approval of the budget minutes?
I will be abstaining since I did not attend the last meeting. This is Lisa Arkin.
Okay,
Same here, Adam.
okay, with the 2 abstentions and the rest approving or voting to approve, it looked like, I think looks like those pass. The next agenda item is brief overview of the proposed budget document. With that, I think we'll hand it over to staff.
Yeah. Travis, did you want to do the affidavit first?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Let me share my screen here for a second. Just as we need to do for the start of each one of these, share the affidavit of public notice. Let me open that and then share my screen for that. So here's the affidavit of public notice in the Register Guard, published for this budget committee meeting today.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's see. So Travis, if you want to, can you also share the budget document? Perfect. All right, so we just have a few updates to share with you folks, just based on the past month and some of the discussions we've had. So we have added at the bottom of the cover page on the document, it does show version 3 and it's dated today. Okay, so couple updates. So what I did is I updated page 4. So if we go to page 4, and this is page 4 of the document, one thing is I'm talking about page numbers. I am working off the page of the document versus the PDF page that it shows at the top. So on page 4, we have our steps in our process. Today we are at budget committee meeting number 2, which continues our conversation. We have a few updates for you guys and then question and answer period. Okay, on page 11, there was some at the bottom. There was a couple questions and discussion about the areas of opportunity for the enterprise fund, which is Airmetrics. It is the last paragraph on this page. It had talked about social justice. Our meaning of that was the environmental justice part. And so due to the fact that that has a much broader meaning and different meanings for other folks, Director Steve is prepared to have a conversation about that. But for now, what we have done in the budget document is we made it a little more generic. And the areas of opportunity for Airmetrics is the innovation, technology updates, and possibly new products. So that particular paragraph, the last sentence, was adjusted slightly from the original version of the budget document. And we can entertain additional questions on that during the Q&A period. All right, page 15 of the budget document. So I want to focus on the grants. We've actually had some really good news in the last couple of weeks on grants. Our TAG 2 grant has been approved and awarded by EPA. And that means we've got an additional 2.7 million to continue our work on the TAG grant up in the Oak Ridge West Fur area. This grant was already part of the budget. We've basically got the expenditures in there that we expect to spend during FY23. Our biggest announcement today is the fact that it was officially awarded. So this will be in our plan for the next several years. In addition, we have one more grant that we did apply for in March. And I wanted to put it on everyone's radar because I did increase the appropriation request for FY23 in anticipation of this next grant being awarded. This is an ARP monitoring grant, and it has to do with monitoring and some community education. ARP is the American Rescue Plan grant. We asked for a total of $461,195. And in FY23, if it is awarded, we are projecting about $175,000 worth of expenditures. The grant is a 3-year grant, and we just won't know more until the fall. But it was important to get it into this budget in case it is awarded in the fall, and we are able to start spending on that grant this next year. If there are questions on the details of that grant, Travis is actually the one from the LRAPA side that managed putting that grant together, and he can speak to that during the Q&A period. And then the last thing I did is on page 16, there was some discussion last meeting about making sure that clearly shown in the budget was resources equals requirements. So I did update the view of our budgets to make sure that was very clear. So this is the all funds page that totals all of our funds together. And it does now show by fund the total requirements, total resources, total requirements. And basically what I really wanted to put in there is our annual change to our reserves, because very importantly, this proposed year, FY23, we are drawing down the reserves again. So I thought that was really important to continue to highlight. You will notice this very similar in the other budget pages. Okay, so hopefully that meets the requirements from folks regarding wanting to see resources equal requirements. Okay, Chair, so that was the last of the edits that we did to the budget document. And I'm passing it back over to you for questions, discussion.
Thank you. Looks like we do have a hand up from Joe.
Thank you. Julie, I was wondering, by placing that grant, Recovery Act grant, that we don't have a clue whether we're going to be awarded that or not. Would it actually really be appropriate to put it in the budget before even receiving or even knowing we receive it, as opposed to doing a supplementary budget halfway down the year or in the fall?
We could do that also. So this will be, when I spoke with the CPA, if there was a good chance that we would be receiving the grant, put it in. If not, keep it out, and then we could bring it back to folks in December if it's awarded.
Sorry. But so do you feel we have a good chance, or I mean, how can you even gauge that? I just am a little bit skeptical on putting money in that we don't even know we have, as opposed to the ease of which just doing it with a supplemental.
Right. So to respond to that, in our budget, because it is in a special fund area of the grants, the funding will be protected in there and not touched unless we are awarded the grant, because it is 100% reimbursable from the grant. So again, you could do it one of two ways.
I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, but I would feel more comfortable by not putting money in there that we don't know we have. And then if we got notification that we are going to be awarded that, to just do a quick supplementary budget and get that approved. I didn't hear anything from the budget committee, so I don't know.
Chair Joe, this is Janine. I'm just jumping in because I'm not sure if Adam is capturing all the hands that are up. But if we were to,
sorry.
Does the budget committee need to act on supplemental budgets, or is that something the board can do without budget committee approval? I don't remember the rules around that. And I'm just also thinking December meetings, we usually don't meet in December. So I'm a little bit wondering about process and just the logistics.
Like Steve has his hands up to maybe weigh in on that.
Well, thanks, Chair. I don't know that I can answer Janine's question entirely. She's spot on with the December not having a scheduled meeting. But to lend context to the actual grant that we apply for, we're competing nationwide for a portion of the American Rescue Plan $50 million pot that EPA's put out there. And it's about $22.5 million of that $50 million pot that everyone is trying to compete for. And our $461,000 application is somewhere in the mid-range type of size of grant. And you're correct, Chair Joe, that there is no certainty we're going to get the grant. But I can tell you, with the added requirement of having working with communities as part of the application process to qualify for this monies. We've worked both with DEQ on their process and supported their effort, just like DEQ has supported our effort with letters of support. And we've also teamed up with Beyond Toxics, Lisa Arkin, as part of the application process. So it looks like a pretty strong application from my perspective, but you know, as well as I do, when you're competing nationwide, you've got a lot of competition.
Thanks. Looks like Mike Fleck is in the queue next.
So yeah, the only downside of not appropriating funds is I do think there's a limit per fund. I want to say 10% that you could increase it. The board can do it by themselves, but you know, for a grant, and this is, remember, we're not appropriating revenue, we're appropriating expenditures. You know, revenue can sit unappropriated if it comes in till the next year. So I guess the question for me is, are we, you know, wanting to spend it within this fiscal year or not? That's kind of just what I remember of budget law, but I'm certainly a little rusty in that department.
Right, and if I could just add, so Mike, yes, working with Travis and this grant, if it is awarded in the fall, about 175,000 would be planned to be spent in FY '23, which is what I put in the budget. So I didn't put the whole grant in, just the 175.
So I think I would just leave it in because that way we're not having to mess with it and we're not going to be bumping up against any caps as far as what we can appropriate during the fiscal year.
Right, and if we don't get awarded, nothing happens with it. Nothing is spent, no work is done. The appropriation just sits there.
Looks like back to Joe.
Yes, Julie, if it just sits there and we never receive it, then how do we get rid of it?
It would just become part of the ending balance. And it really, because it's grants and grants have to match grants, our expenditures would just be zero for that grant for next year. Then, depending on what our grants look like next year, we either add or subtract from it. So it does disappear off of our books. It is just a budgeted item. It is not an actual item. So when you start looking at actuals, it falls off the books.
Okay,
So-
this seems odd to me. If we don't have any expenses to take away the monies or the resources that have been earmarked or placed in there, that to make them just disappear by a wave of a wand just seems odd on a spreadsheet.
Well, when you look at our budget and you look at past years, you're looking at actuals. You're not looking at those budgeted years. So it will always be in the budgeted part, but what is shown in the budget document are actuals from previous years.
Okay.
Looks like next up is Howard Saxon.
Yeah, you mentioned that we're drawing down our reserves, and of course that's kind of concerning to me. And I was wondering, have you done any projections on out years as to whether that's going to be a continuing thing, or is this just a one-year drawdown? I'm really concerned about the sustainability of continuing to draw down reserves. So could you please comment on that?
Right. So for FY '23, the drawdown is one time. What we were looking at is some capital improvement projects and kind of getting into the high priority need to get them taken care of this building. So they are one-time expenses versus adding staff or doing anything that would be ongoing.
Okay. And with regard to the capital expense, I know that you talked about replacing the heating, ventilation, air conditioning system. Probably getting a little down into the weeds here, but the current system, does it use natural gas for heating? And if so, does the replacement anticipate using the same fuel source besides electricity, or going to all electric? I'm concerned about continuing use of fossil fuels, and also just the long-term cost as perhaps fossil fuels become increasingly expensive. So could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, so actually we have Lance. Lance, you're on, correct? Can you have a discussion answering those questions on what we've been looking at?
Yeah, so we're kind of in a preliminary stage of looking at things. Our system is currently all electric. There is no gas. And so that would not be an issue, but it would be replacing kind of what's been here since the building has been built. And we're in the process of, we have one quote now and getting some other quotes, but nothing's been determined exactly the direction we're headed yet. I don't know if that answers your questions. It kind of cut out a little on me as I was switching to a panelist. So,
well, since it's currently all electric, is the intent to continue to be all electric?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
All right,
quotes we've received so far.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm. Thanks. I think Ruth was next in the queue.
Yes, I'd like to go back to Joe's concern, Julie, because when you look at the overall budget on page 16, where you're using 2,560,000 in the revenues for the proposed budget, and you go to page 19, and we're working with that same number against revenues for and expenditures against that in the next section. So it's hard for me as a budget committee member to not see that we are working with the grant revenues that are being reflected on page 16. Am I incorrect?
Well, on page 16, the grants are in the, now I'm going to make an assumption you guys can see the colors. The grants are in the green color, kind of in the middle of the page of 16. It's got 1.3, $1.4 million. There we go. Thanks, Travis. $1.4 million in the proposed budget. Whereas the general fund has the revenues of the 2.5 million, which the general fund equates to what is on page 19. That is specifically general fund. So that does separate the grants out.
Okay.
If you want to look at the grants by themselves, you will find them on page 24. So this is where the 175 has been added. There we go. Thank you. So the 175 for that anticipated ARP grant.
Okay, great. That I'm glad there's apples and oranges. So that makes it clear for me.
Yeah, so we will keep the accounting will be very separate on these grants because all three of these grants are reimbursable. So every quarter it has to balance to zero.
Okay. Okay. Super. Thank you.
It looks like Janine was next in the queue.
Loop on the one-time capital expenditures that Howard brought up. I think what my concern, and I brought this up last time, is I'm completely in support of making those, if we have the reserves, to make the one-time expenditures and not to continue to defer maintenance because that's more expensive in the long run. But I also am concerned just with supply chain and inflationary costs that are, the bids that we get in are going to be higher than our budgeted amount. So I guess the question would be twofold. What will you do if that's the case? And then if we have to prioritize, what is the priority of those capital investments?
Right, and I'll let Lance speak to this a little bit, but we do have HVAC as our number one, and we are aware that the bids are probably going to come in over what we had previously had. So Lance, do you want to comment on kind of where we are on that?
Yeah, you know, the HVAC is the one thing we actually have at least one bid on. The other things, specifically the parking lot / landscape, we're in the middle of. And even that has already turned into a much larger project than anticipated. The parking lot's in much poorer shape than we realized at first. And so there are things that probably we'll definitely need to prioritize. Currently, it's the HVAC system, since that affects our employees, not just comfort, but also health with getting a better filtering system. But there is definitely the potential that we would have to just do one project this coming year instead of 2 or 3 because of cost. And that is being taken into account. Make sure we prioritize and not expect to be able to do everything we want to this fiscal year.
Thanks. Howard, did you still have your hand up from before, or did it go up again?
Sorry,
Okay.
lowered.
Okay, thanks. I think Mike was next then.
So Julie, could you walk me through the capital expenditures again in the general fund? Because I'm looking at page 22 and I'm seeing $140,000, yet we're going 200 and what is it, $43,000 in the hole in that fund?
Yeah, so let me.
And I know you'd mentioned some stuff before, and I'm sorry, I'm not remembering what that was.
Okay. Yeah, so overall, we've got about 160 capital improvement and building improvements in the budget. And I am actually, for everybody, I'm looking on page 19, which is the general fund. I'm looking at the top in the proposed summary. You see capital improvements. The total projected is 160. So that includes these bigger projects, plus some general building maintenance that we may have to do throughout the year. I also have the 100,000 contingency in there. So that contingency has been budgeted for several years now, and we have not used it as part of our actuals. So that comes up to about 260.
Right, but well, I guess I'm just going to echo Janine's comments about concerns. I mean, we're in a situation where we have negative revenue going forward, and I know we have capital needs, so I'm not suggesting we don't do them. But it's concerning to me to see us going in the hole in every fund in this budget. So I'm just going to express that and leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, I think Lisa was next in the queue.
Thank you. Yeah, and sorry, I'm in a place with intermittent internet, so I'll just keep my video off. I appreciate the discussion earlier on by Julie regarding, I think it was page 11, the social justice, and wanted to just revisit that again. I'm really glad that the staff is recognizing the scientifically proven connection between underserved communities and their potential to be exposed to air toxics, and glad that point is being made. And I just wanted to confirm whether the intention in the suggested, I don't know if you could pull that back up, Julie, if you, or Travis, if you could, the wording there, whether LRAPA is planning to add air toxics to their air metric system, which currently only measures particulate matter.
Yeah, Steve, I don't know if you want to address that.
So yes, I can start. I think Lance may be able to add some more specifics. We are always looking for ways to improve our monitoring capabilities. Lance has been working also with some of the folks at DEQ to try to figure out what the possibilities are and to enhance our monitoring system in general. The technology that everyone keeps wishing for is an air toxic sampler that's as cheap and reliable as particulate monitoring that people have become accustomed to with the mini-vol samplers. But all of those types of technologies are not exactly where they need to be. So in short, and I'll turn it over to Lance here, is we're looking for ways to enhance air toxics. Is one of those that we're focused on.
Yeah, I guess I can echo what Steve said. And as far as our metrics, I think Trinidad's on here too, but that is one option to look at, is adding some type of toxics sampling to the mini-vol itself. It can do some of those samples now, but there's still the lab-based analysis type of sampling where you have to do some analysis. It's not any kind of real-time availability of those type of sensors right now with the mini-vol, but but yeah, we are continuing to work with the state to be able to improve our toxic sampling and reaching out to be able to do more of that and have quicker data turnaround on those samples.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add to that, Lance is right. The sampler can be customized for toxic sampling, but as he mentioned, it is a lab-based option. So you wouldn't be able to, get immediate data from it.
Okay, yeah, thank you for this. And I just put in the chat language that was in the final budget MINS update 2020-04, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, is that language in the document being considered today? It was language from page 5. And it was the answer to someone's question about social justice. Because I think that language is a decent amendment.
I think what may have been meant is that it's an equitable solution. I think when you speak in terms of underserved or I'm not sure what the other term was, but social justice can be looked at in many different ways. But I think one thing we could agree on is that fence line communities definitely do need some kind of option that is more affordable. And I think that's maybe what was meant with Airmetrics and the Minival TAS being an area of opportunity for this type of sampling. It's affordable. Grassroots operations, they use our sampler, they cite it. So just a little bit of extra info on that.
Great, thank you for keeping this topic on the front burner and acknowledging the needs of frontline communities. Thank you. So I hope that the language from the draft document can be included. Thank you.
Thanks. Looks like Ruth has her hand up next.
Yes, I appreciate the information about Airmetrics, the history as well as its role within LRAPA. But as we were talking at the previous meeting, there was definitely noted that it's going to be a deficit in the budget, quite a significant deficit, and that there were other companies that were competing in the market that could do it cheaper. So my question is this a function of LRAPA that is going to continue to lose money or requires more money to compete? And if that's the case, is it really wise to continue to have it as part of the effort of LRAPA in this next fiscal year?
Okay, so I'm going to address part of it, and Steve, and I don't know if Trinidad wants to also, but so when you're looking at LRAPA over the last couple of years, we have had losses. So anticipated about 20,000 this year, and what is projected for next year is about 22,000. So, however, Airmetrics does have about 23 months worth of reserves, which what we presented last time was it gives us a little bit of time to see if there is some market adjustments. I understand we've talked about competitors. However, the market continues to change on this, which may give us some opportunity, especially with some local competitors possibly, in regards to continuing this enterprise fund. So Steve, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I can. It's just that, it's too early to tell to phrase the answer to the original question of the viability of Airmetrics. It is doing the work that it's been designed to do, and Trinidad's worked very hard to make it successful in all these years, even in the lean times. But everyone knows as well as here, and especially Trinidad, as the technology gets advanced by others, our competition gets more fierce. And so being able to stay in a special niche market that Aerometrics has been able to take advantage of for the last 15 years is changing. And so we want an opportunity to look at not only what Aerometrics can do differently, as well as what it currently does well, but also from a plan. We have time to do that evaluation and come up with a better plan rather than deciding today when the Aerometrics enterprise still has money to work with. So we don't want to make a snap judgment, nor do we want to continue something that's not going to be viable in the future. So we need time Julie and I need time to look at that more closely. You know, Julie's been here less than a year and I've been here just over a year. So this is definitely on the list to take a closer look and make some really good decisions along with the expertise that Trinidad can provide, being involved with this all these years.
Okay.
If I can add to that, I think that's something that's really easy to overlook, and it's just because of fatigue of COVID. I mean, everybody's tired of it. Nobody wants to hear that anymore. But honestly, our market is Asia. And over the last 2 years, we've sold 90 less samplers per year into Asia, which equals around $336,000 of revenue. Now, that's a large chunk. So when we're missing our market, I think everybody else is as well. Everybody else in the industry is also facing the same hurdle. So we're not unique in that sense, but the last 2 years have definitely taken a toll. And although we're falling behind on technology, the bigger issue still is COVID. So that has to be considered as well.
Well, thank you for that. So if there's, so if we're using Airmark in order to give us information about the air quality wherever it's being implemented, if we get all this information, but we're lacking the staff and coverage of the workload in order to do the operations of LRAPA, that's where I'm seeing a bit of disconnect, where you can have quality resource out there, but if there's such a lag between information and the ability to manage it and act on it, I'm speculating, obviously, but I want a better understanding of if we're chasing this market, but it's not helping LRAPA operate its mission, I'm concerned.
I'm not sure that we're chasing a market. The market is there. It's just, it's just down at the moment. Again, the US is not where we sell the majority of our samplers. And really, since it is a filter-based sampler, it in comparison to the sensors that are being used now that provide the instant data, although they're precise, they're not very accurate, and that still requires interpretation. So, I mean, you have to consider those costs as well.
Okay. Thank you for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Janine?
Just to wrap up part of the conversation, for me, I've been for a number of years, I'm appreciative of how Aerometrics has helped support the financial health of organizations that's really challenged financially. And getting an internet is unstable, so I'm going to, I hope you don't lose me. So I support the idea of giving us some more time and a runway to better assess the future of this enterprise fund. So to me, that feels like a wise and strategic move, and I look forward to that conversation in the future. I wanted to skip back to the Title V budget, if that's okay. I brought this up at the last meeting just because it wasn't reflected very well in the minutes, and because my buddy Mike Fleck has brought this up on a number of occasions. And this is a fund that has struggled more than some of our other funds, and it has been kind of living on reserves for the past couple of years. And we've been reducing the expenditures in alignment. But this year I noticed, in addition to relying on some reserves to keep it propped up, we're increasing the expenditure. So Julie and Steve, I was wondering if you could just speak to, for the benefit of the record, how are we going to keep this fund sustainable over the long run?
Yeah, thank you, Janine. And Chair, if I may, I can give you a little bit of context of this is not a LRAPA only problem when it comes to Title V funding. It's a challenge basically nationwide. The program started in 1990 under the Clean Air Act amendments, and it was always been designed and crafted in a way by EPA that is supposed to be a self-funded endeavor when it comes to these types of permits that localities and states have to issue. What has changed over time is as emissions have gone down and less Title V sources are there, less revenue is generated to help fund the activities of that program. So through time, other states as well as Oregon have looked for other creative ways to actually fund the program through time. So we're now 32 years into the program, and some of the old ways of generating revenue are no longer adequate. For example, the last coal-fired power plant in Oregon shut down last year. That was about a $850,000 annual emissions fee that came into the state that no longer exists. So while the Title V fund in LRAPA is around 65,000 K in the red, so to speak, DEQ's is in the millions. So I have been working very diligently with Ali Razakali, who is the air administrator for DEQ, who's facing the same problem in their fiscal year 23 budget as well, trying to figure out creative ways to actually go to the legislature to ask for a change in how the fees are assessed, or other creative ways to generate the revenues for the program. So it's an ongoing problem, not only for LRAPA and Oregon, but also nationwide.
Just a quick follow-up, Steve, are you familiar with any pressure at the federal level to change the requirements or, make the administrative burden of managing the Title V permits lower so that it's not so resource intensive? I mean, I always, I think the thing that frustrates a lot of people about government is that it always feels like we're looking for additional revenue, right? Like the rules keep changing, so we need more. Sometimes I wonder how, and it's always refreshing when this comes up, but how are we being more efficient or changing the administrative burden so that we can get the work done, have the outcomes we're looking for, but don't need the staff intensiveness of it. So, I mean, the program seems to be working to a certain extent. Yeah, long story short, is there pressure at the federal level to change the rules?
Not sure if there's actual pressure at the federal level to change the rules. If anything, more requirements keep coming from the federal level that impact those types of permits. However, at the state levels, with other national organizations that I'm a part of, we are finding that the common problems that need to be solved are coming up with some unique possibilities that are not always being enacted on right now. For example, and I don't want to belabor this too much. I'll gladly talk with you, Janine, in more detail about this, but as the program has matured and the emissions have gone down because it's been working against itself, so to speak, it's been clearing up the air, but not necessarily funding itself adequately. You run into situations where what can you do to become more efficient? That's exactly one of the things I'm talking to Ali about at DEQ. And there are possibilities out there, but it will take a change not only from how we do business, but how the industry itself is asked to comply with that business. And so there are a number of options that we have at our fingertips, but we need to roll it out in a smart way. And I'll gladly talk to you about that because I don't want to keep taking too much time on this, but it is an ongoing problem and it will be addressed one way or another.
Thank you.
Thanks. It looks like next in the queue is Steve. Looks like you're on mute still. Maybe we can skip ahead to Lisa and come back to you, Steve. It looks like your audio is not working for some reason.
Thank you. Sure, I'll go super quick. It was just a follow-up to Janine's question. Question maybe for Steve. Could some of the disparities, I guess, in the Title V budget be solved as facilities are called into Cleaner Air Oregon? Because as far as I understand, there are increased fees related to going through the Cleaner Air Oregon process for Title V facilities. Is there any relationship there?
So the only relationship there is if a Title V facility has to go through Clean Air Oregon, that activity is actually bolted on to an already established Title V permitting program. The fees generated for Clean Air Oregon is a separate fee generator than Title V, unless the premise of the Clean Air Act that says you can use other funds for Title V, you can't mix the two when it comes to how you fund the program.
Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. I too switched to an iPad and I'm familiar with it all. So I guess I wanted to echo what Ruth had indicated about Airmetrics coming in, this being my first year. I'm not suggesting that I know what's going on with Airmetrics, but my concern is running a business within a non quasi-government organization. So, I mean, it may be appropriate, but just want to echo that. Also, I had some questions about the distinction between the monitoring role of LRAPA and the enforcement role. And I guess I'd like to see more information on that. Again, I just may be missing some information that's there, but my questions with regard to that, I didn't think were quite fleshed out enough for me. And then I'd like to comment on another topic. So I'm not sure where exactly we're at in terms of the agenda. So are we specific or just general things?
This is still general Q&A, so go ahead with another topic.
Okay, thank you. Well, I wanted to, and I know this is a board issue, but I wanted to comment on adoption of PERS. I just think it's I'm against that, I guess, but I wanted to point out that joining PERS will take away any flexibility that may benefit LRAPA in the future. Once you're in PERS, you can't get out. And then the defined benefit aspect of PERS makes LRAPA future budgets responsible for defined future promises, no matter what. I mean, you can't get out of them. And then using a strictly defined contribution benefit will be of valuable financial advantage over time. In other words, if you avoid the defined benefit aspect, you're not responsible for that should you want to change ways of doing that. And then in the event that PERS does join, or LRAPA does join PERS, consider that negotiations with PERS make clear that existing liabilities are not included in LRAPA's service costs. And that because PERS uses a higher discount rate than what can be achieved over time, LRAPA's budget should set aside an extra approximately 3% of payroll to cover the unfunded liability that's inherent in the defined benefit calculations that PERS uses. So, thank you for that.
So Julie and Chair, I don't know how you want to go about answering, because I heard three things: Airmetrics, monitoring versus enforcement, and then PERS. So there's three separate questions there. And I think with the last one there, I'm going to be silent on that because it's PERS related, and Julie and others can understand why I'm not going to try to address that. But I can at least say that a lot of your questions, Steve, have been covered in previous meetings with many of the board members here. But from the Airmetrics running a business, it's totally legit. This is an enterprise operation. local governments, and Julie can speak to this with her experience. Fire and safety and EMS type enterprises exist all over the state of Oregon, and their enterprise funds as well. So it's not uncommon to have government agencies have an enterprise fund as part of their budget. And then when it comes to monitoring versus enforcement, we monitor ambient air. We also monitor facilities that we write permits for as part of the requirements of those permits. The enforcement is something that's done separate from monitoring. As a matter of fact, we keep enforcement separate from our compliance activities as well as our permitting activities in the agency itself. I oversee the enforcement aspect of it, and the monies generated from that actually get returned back to Lane County each year. The monitoring is something we use as an indicator for how good air quality is in the area and how well facilities are meeting their air permits. And I'll stop there in case Julie wants to add. You're on mute, Julie.
Just a tiny bit on PERS. So Steve, we have addressed a lot of those questions on PERS, and we are currently just in the process of working on an agreement to bring back to the board in regards to PERS. And we have received some costing information from PERS, and quite a bit, we've talked quite a bit about the history of that. Okay. Chair Adam, I do believe that Mary Bridget is being, oh, she is. Mary Bridget is on as a panelist now. I reached out to her regarding the question about the grant and should or it should not be in, and maybe do a supplemental. And I thought maybe it would be helpful for the budget committee to hear her thought on this.
Sure.
Good with that? Okay.
Hello, I'm Mary Bridget
Hi.
Smith. I'm your LRAPA's attorney, also the city attorney for Springfield. It was my understanding you had a question about procedurally how to appropriate or document a potential grant from the EPA that might be coming LRAPA's way this year, and whether that should be noted in the budget this year or as a supplemental budget in the next year. Is that correct?
Correct. The application has gone in, but no grant awards will happen until the fall.
Okay. I think in this case, this would be my sense is to go ahead and put it in this year's budget, even though it hasn't been awarded yet. Supplementals are really meant more for situations where the governing body is either gets revenues or appropriations that they're not aware of at budget time. And then you do a supplemental budget during the year. So that would be my suggestion if that works for you all.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll go ahead and turn off my camera. I'll still have my listening in case anything else comes up.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And then Chair Brew, we also had one more question that Janine had brought forward, and it was posted in the chat, just wanting to address it. Yes, the partner dues, the revenue from the partner dues are what is agreed on for next year. So I verified Lane counties, and that is what I have for Lane County. And that is what we spoke, Director Steve and I spoke with the Lane County administrator on. And just so everybody remembers, it is half at this point of what it used to be. And this is a long time ago in 2008, 2009.
Julie, or can you bring up that spreadsheet? Because it looked to me like the increase, and maybe I was just looking at the wrong number. So could be completely off here, but when I look at the changes for the other large institutions like City of Eugene and Springfield, that I thought we were doing a per capita and cost of living, a CPI adjustment, and it looked like the other large government agencies had a more significant increase, and that Lane County's was just a couple, like $23 or something. So I'm making that number up, obviously. That's not the right one. You have to go down to like page oh, I can't remember what page it was.
Yeah,
which-
farther
the general
down.
fund
One more.
dues by,
One more, there you go. So,
So-
yeah, and because population is part of this calculation. So, let me get back to you in writing of the specifics and the spreadsheet you're talking about, but, so City of Eugene and Springfield's moved a little bit more because population growth between the areas of those two cities and Lane County.
okay, so that's a feature of the difference between the population growth of Lane County and the two cities. And they all got the same CPI adjustment?
Correct. And Lane County is basically calculated as everything but the cities that are listed.
Sure, sure.
Yep.
Okay, like I said, it's just like a very small number relative to everybody else. And I'm guessing that means Oak Ridge is, oh, well, I'll let Mike speak to the small cities.
Yeah, and it just has to do with, this was the pie that we split up, and then these are the 5 that are in the pie, and it's just based on those numbers.
It looks like Mike's hands up.
Yeah, and I just want to remind the board and let the budget committee know that both Cottage Grove and Oak Ridge are still paying the original rate. We never reduced our amount like Lane County, Eugene, and Springfield did. So our rate actually is twice per population in this budget what the other jurisdictions are. And I just want to remind folks of that.
But Mike, it looks like your numbers went down this year?
Yeah, and that doesn't make sense. Our population's up, but to actually go down to a number that's reflective of the population.
Sure, sure.
Other
I
ones
understand.
would be about 5,000 or 6,000.
Right, you're still paying more than, or more than your fair share if we think about it relative to the other partner agencies, but the numbers, they just looked odd to me, so I just want to double check them before we approve the budget.
Well, and it doesn't matter what we approve. I mean, that can be adjusted at any point. It's the same thing about the other appropriations. You don't necessarily have to get all of those revenues or expend them.
If I may, Chair, to remind everyone that earlier this year or towards the end of last year, we brought a resolution to the board to allow LRAPA to adjust how these dues are calculated going forward. And Julie and I have already been working with each individual locality to let them know what that resolution was all about and what we're going to be talking about with them. Hopefully in August of this year. It involves the CPI, it involves population, but there's also some other not in-kind services, but level of service that's going to be taken into account going forward, which could change these numbers through time.
So I guess to follow up on that, Steve, I don't know that our board has actually approved that because I know I adamantly disagree. Disproportionately, Oak Ridge would have a huge amount of service that's being applied, yet they have the biggest needs because of the inversions that come in up there. So that absolutely makes no sense. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, well, looking at the queue, I don't see any other. Okay, Joe, just saw a hand pop up.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget document and forward to the board of public to the board for public hearing adoption.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. So then I'll call to a vote the approval of budget document and forward to the board for public hearing. If we could.
It'd be easiest to do it by roll call, Adam.
I thought Iva had a question before we take a vote.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
I thought she may have been doing that for a second, would be my guess, but.
Oh, you're probably right. I just didn't want to rush a decision if there was discussion on the motion.
Thanks. Could I get some help from Travis maybe to do the roll call, just because I'm having trouble with my iPad?
Sure, no problem. I can help. I'll just go through the screen as they appear to me. Adam, you're first.
Approve. Vote to approve.
Steve,
Yes, approved.
Ruth,
Approve.
Michelle,
Approve.
Lisa,
Vote to approve.
Eva, or Iva, I'm sorry. She put in
Typed in
chat
approve.
approve. Yes, Marianne,
Vote to approve.
Mike,
Approve.
Joe,
Aye.
Janine,
Approve.
Matt,
Proof.
and Howard.
Aye.
And that's all budget committee members and board members present.
All right, well, thank you. With that, I guess we'll adjourn the budget committee and get a little bit of the time back we took last time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, budget committee members.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, everybody.
So Travis, on the regular board meeting, does everybody leave and use the same link to come back, or just turn their cameras and microphones off? And
Either way, the meeting number link is the same. I'm going to pause the recording and leave this meeting sort of ongoing so people can turn the camera off if they don't want to rejoin, or they can leave the meeting and then use the same link to come back in. And then the board of directors meeting is called to order at 12:45 today.
okay, we'll see everybody at 12:45. Thank you, Travis.
No problem.
So you're a hacker, Mike?
No, but I used to be a gamer, actually. I just don't have time anymore. But no, I've got an i9 at home with 64 gigs of regular memory, and it's got 11 gigs of video memory. And oh yeah, it's a beast.
All right, so we're at 12:46. I'm going to call this LRAPA board meeting to order with roll call.
Sure. Present with us, we have Chair Joe Piscineri, Vice Chair Janine Parisi, Board Member Mike Fleck, Board Member Howard Saxon, Board Member Jenna Nee, Staff Member Steve Dietrich, Staff Member Lance Giles, myself, and in attendance, we have LRAPA staff Cassandra Jackson, Debbie, Jonathan Wright, Jim Daniels from Roseboro, Josh Proudfoot from Good Company, Julie Lindsay, LRAPA staff, Marlene, who is our minutes recorder, Martha or Peter Dragovich from the Citizens Advisory Committee, Max Huffley from LRAPA, Robbie Robertson's from LRAPA, Trinidad from LRAPA, and James Hugo, member of the public.
Thank you very much. The next agenda item would be any adjustments to the agenda from anyone. I just want to make a quick announcement as far as the agenda is concerned. I've got a hard commitments at the end of this, and I cannot go beyond the latest time indicated on the agenda, preferably a little sooner, just let you know. All right, so is there any item or anybody participating from the public, Travis, that you can see?
We have one member participating from the public, James Hugo, here today. And Janine asked in the chat if we have a quorum, and we have 5 board members with us. So yes, a quorum.
Okay, yeah, we have a quorum, 5 or more, Janine, and we're good. All right. So I guess, is there anybody that would like to comment from the public? I suppose I should just ask it anyway.
Yeah, let me move Matt over here. He signed in, my bad, let me find him. And James Hugo has his hand up, so we'll get there.
Okay.
Okay, Matt should be moving over.
Oh, there he is. Welcome back, Matt.
And
you have one from the audience who would like to speak, Travis, and
yep.
And you have a timer set.
This we have, yep. So James, you should be allowed to speak now.
Okay, Mr. Hugo, go ahead. You have go ahead and state your comments.
My name's James Hugo. I live out in Thurston, Springfield, Oregon, 97478. I've spoke before in past meetings. my concern today is the same thing that I've been concerned about, is there's not enough air monitoring stations in Lane County, specifically an NCORE system. That's NCORE. There should be a few of them, and I'm really concerned that LRAPA has not addressed these concerns. I know I'm not the only one that's concerned about it, even though I'm the only member of the public right now in this meeting. And then while I still have time to talk, I am very concerned that not every single board member or individual that works for LRAPA acknowledges climate change. It's a pretty big issue in our world right now. And it just concerns me that we have certain board members that are on the board there at LRAPA that do not agree with the science that is out there. It's, I think, a pretty big conflict of interest, considering it's the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency. But yeah, so currently I live out here in Thurston, and everybody's telling me from LRAPA that international paper is fine, they're in their permit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And while I live here, and I disagree with those findings and those statements, especially when there's no public information available to me or anybody in the community about what is actually being emitted from the complex out there, the recycling facility, the craft paper mill, and the big water treatment facility. So that's my concern, and I would love LRAPA to address these concerns and get some more air monitoring stations. I mean, especially up in Oak Ridge too. I mean, the same air we have down here in the flats of Springfield by International Paper, all that bad stagnant air goes up into Oak Ridge as well. And it's the same kind of thing. Like the air gets trapped down to the ground and it's not being released up into the air like it should be. So, and then again, while I still have a few more seconds, I definitely would like LRAPA to stop, like Travis and Steve and anybody else at LRAPA that personally has personal ill feelings against me, to put those feelings aside and actually like communicate with me, effectively, instead of, oh, it's Hugo, he complains too much. Oh, we're not going to deal with him because he's annoying us. I'm a citizen. I'm just as equal as you guys are. And and Mr. Pishneri, I really think you should resign your position on this LRAPA board, because I think you're not doing a good job, and it's really frustrating for a member of the public watching you, like say statements like, oh, I got to leave early today. It's like, what are you doing? I mean,
Mr. Hugo, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you've hit the 3
no,
minute.
you're not sorry. You like to cut me off. You love it.
So
have a good day.
Thank you for your comments. Take care. Is there anybody else from the public, Travis?
I don't believe so. There is one number on here ending in 8704, which may potentially be a member of the public. I'll give the option for that number to talk if you like, and then it is *6 to unmute yourself on Zoom. And if we don't hear anything, then I assume they might just be joining to listen.
Fair enough. Okay, I don't see any movement, Travis, so I think we can move on. Go ahead, Janine.
Just in response to Mr. Hugo's comments, I'm assuming that staff has told them about Cleaner Air Oregon and when the IP facility will be called into that process, because it feels like to me that is an opportunity for a lot more public information about the toxic or potentially toxic emissions that are associated with that facility.
Chair Joe, members of the board, and Janine, yes, I think Mr. Hugo's been told that multiple times through our complaint response, especially through Travis.
And the timeline for that is, I know that we're taking 1 or 2 at a time, and it's an immense amount of work. So I'm not asking because I'm impatient about it, but I just wonder about the timeline.
Chair Joe, members of the board, I believe the schedule, if I remember correctly, is at the end of this calendar year. By the end of this calendar year, they'll be called in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, next agenda item would be any comments not included in today's agenda or any comments from the board? I think we got some of those done already. Okay, moving on to our first
Can I-
action. Oh, go ahead.
I'm
Janine.
sorry.
Okay.
I know you have a short stop or a hard stop, but I just wanted to thank everyone for inviting members to participate in the budget committee. I thought we had a really thoughtful group of folks this year who asked really great questions, and I just appreciate, it's a little bit of extra work to get that extra level of involvement, and I thought we had a really stellar group this year. And also, Julie, the material you presented and was just stellar and very clear. And my kudos to staff for a really great process this year. I mean, of course, we're still wishing we weren't dipping into reserves to fund the necessary work of the organization. And I'd love to see Airmetrics be in the positive again and create some more headroom and bandwidth for us to keep doing the good work we're doing. So anyway, kudos and thanks everybody.
Thank you. I concur, Janine. Thank you. Mike.
So, and I just make a quick comment. I mean, I'm sorry, Mr. Hugo's unhappy, but I did just notice a comment in the chat, and public comment is over. So we need no more of that. So what I am is one of those procedural guys that really follows meeting rules. So we'll be done with public comment for today, but I would welcome you to reach out again, and we're certainly happy to talk to you. I also am a little concerned about blanket statements about folks, about climate change. I've not heard anybody on this board express opinions, counter to what is in the best interest of our air quality. And so I think we're all in this together, and we're working for the health of our community in our airshed. So that's the statement I'm going to make, and leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Next agenda item is the consent calendar. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Fleck, seconded by Board Member Saxon and Janine.
I'm on a roll today. I promise I won't be like this the entire meeting. I have a request for an amendment to the very last section of the minutes, only because this is really important to me and I want it to be clear in the minutes. I propose we change that last sentence that says to the following, and I've already emailed this to Debbie. So with the permission of the board, noted the purpose of the budgeted contingency was for expected costs, but she wanted to include additional contingency in the event annual PERS increases are higher than projected.
Can you tell me what page that is, please?
Oh God, now I have to have the minutes in front of me. Travis,
Yes.
can you help me out? It's the very last paragraph at the end of the minutes, so that I think it's the very last sentence. It's really small and I'm having a hard time seeing. Yes, so see that very last sentence, Precy noted that the purpose that. So I'm suggesting a clarification and content to that language. And I can read it again if that's helpful.
Okay, everyone sees that, and then someone, do you want to modify your motion, Mike?
Yes, I'll move it to include the amended line in the minutes.
And I agree as a seconder.
Okay, it's been, the motion's been amended by the same parties, seconded by the same party. All those in favor signify by raising your electronic hand or your physical hand. All right, looks unanimous from the board members. Thank you very much, everybody. Moving on. So we are looking at a report, a status report from Oak Ridge Air.
Let me get Josh in here. Go.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like, Steve, you got your hand up. What do you have?
Just real quick, Chair, members of the board. I didn't hear every word that Janine said about changing the comment. So can we make sure we have clear wording that is intended for that so that we can make good on the promise?
I emailed them to Debbie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Welcome, welcome, Josh. Go ahead.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Very fine.
Okay, great. Well, so the biggest news that some of us have been sitting on for a long time until we got permission to say it from EPA is that we got another award for the Oak Ridge tag. So we've got another 2.7 million to carry the 5-year program to 7 years and take it as far as we possibly can with the wood stove change out. So that's kudos to everybody involved in the program, LRAPA, the success of the early part of the program. But what that'll give us the chance to stay on it until we can get through what I hope is all of the household sources. So that's the big hooray. The next stuff is much smaller, and I just wanted to say that the Southern Willamette Solutions that does a lot of the work on this program is helping the community with a number of grants. They're working on a lot of fire protection grants and air quality and smoke mitigation, but they're also just trying to build resilience in the community, period. So there have been a few grants submitted for the activity center and solar power as a way to back up when they lose power in emergency events, as well as this smoke mitigation grant, which is highly relevant to this, where they're starting to clear the hazardous fuels around the areas of town. And those are going to contribute cordwood to the wood program, the firewood program. The heart of what we're doing, and Howard, I bet you're happy to hear this. This is the thing that's been on my mind too, is how fast and how far are we going on this? So there's text there, but I just want to give you the high level, and that's, sorry, that's that there are 46 homes in the program now. So we had the pilot, we're not quite through the pilot of 9 homes, but we've got another 46 enrolled. 4 homes have been completed all the way. That means weatherization, ductless heat pump, and wood stove change out. The audits on the houses, we've got another 29. So those are out to bid. So that tells you that we're accelerating the pace of the program. We have 6 stoves installed, but 9 pulled. 3 folks didn't even want their stove back once they got the heat pump. We've got 12 homes with heat pumps installed. We've got 6 homes completely weatherized. And then we had 3 folks that backed out, and we're not quite sure why, but I'm going to dig into that a little bit later. Some of the things that are slowing us down, I've already shared about supply chain issues with materials. But also it's just that very few contractors do all 3 of these things. So for every home, typically we have 3 contractors as well as the auditor. So there's just a lot of fussy transaction costs in there. We're bumping into weird things too in individual houses, as we would expect with very old homes. A lot of them with unsafe electrical. So we have to actually put that weatherization money towards the panel so we can put in the ductless heat pump. We've had a couple of hoarding situations where the workers can't access anything. And some of what we have to do there is actually help get that stuff out. So part of what we're using these funds for is actually throwing stuff out so we can get access to the walls and the windows. It sounds bizarre, but we had talked to EPA about that, and they're clear that we have to do these kinds of repairs and odd things. So we're dramatically accelerating that part of the program, which gives me a lot of comfort. And part of that is also just getting people trained on assessing the fireplace situations, because that has to be a certified position. So we're getting a number of vendors, including 2 local vendors and our staff, to go through that so we can get through that process faster. That is definitely a bottleneck for us. Community firewood program is still going strong. Roseburg is still contributing a large number of wood, which we're grateful for, about 140 cords of wood. And then our education efforts continue to go. The shop class continues to make sheds, wood sheds for community members and delivers them. We've got the little kids doing coloring contests on these themes. We're doing tabling at events. And again, we're still working on fuels reduction, not just around the city, but in people's yards. So this is all part of the smoke extensions, and where we've gotten momentum. Southern Willamette Solutions has managed to leverage that for these other grants that kind of pile on top. And then last but not least, our air filter program. We didn't get many takers when we sent out the postcards, but we have them all stored, and we know all we need is one smoke event, and we'll open up the doors and we'll help distribute those. So that's it in a nutshell. Janine, I see you have a question.
I'm just going to continue my roll on here. Hey, on the tree planting event, which sounds super fun and community, like what a great community event. Do you have access to seed stock? And the only reason why I asked that is because I know there was leftover seedlings from the Holiday Farm Fire replanting effort this spring, and I can see if they still have some. It's all Doug fir, which I don't know how you feel about that from a fire-wise issue, but just throwing it out there in case you want me to see if there's any leftover.
Let me check in with Sarah, who runs that program, but we're just mainly tabling at that event, but it'd be a cool thing just on goodwill for the community. So let me check on that. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for the report, Josh. We appreciate it. Good work.
Thank you.
All right. Next item is report from the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Sure, yep. Jim Daniels is here. I'll throw Jim on. Hi, Jim.
Hello.
We can hear you, Jim. Thanks.
Okay. So March is our time for electing our chair and vice chair. So I was reelected as chair. There were no other nominees, and Kelly Wood was elected as vice chair. She'd held that position for a couple of months. We had hoped to interview James Bruvold for a public position on the committee, and he had some technical difficulties, so we hope to talk to him next month. And then we continued our discussion about a brochure for regarding gas-powered tools, and we had a draft to work from. There's some fine points being added now, and hopefully after the April meeting, we'll have something to present to you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Any questions from or comments from the board? Councillor Keating. Matt, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just a hearty congratulations to Jim on your reelection, and a heartfelt thank you for the education piece regarding gas-powered lawn tools.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Travis, you have your hand up. Go ahead. Thanks, Matt.
Chair Joe, members of the board, I just want to remind everybody too, there still are two standing CAC applications, Misty Frost, and then I forget, Ronnie was the other one. James Bruvold, we had intended to interview in the most recent CAC meeting, but there was technical issues. So hopefully in the next meeting, we will have that interview, and then in the next month, there will be 3 potential appointees to the CAC for you to consider. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that.
And those are still remaining open in interim, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate the update on that. So item number 7 on the agenda, Steve, your report on our activities, your activities, please.
Thank you, Chair Joe, members of the board. Seems like it's been a while since I've done a full director's report, but trying to be expedient with time as well. So for the month of March, overall, we had good air quality days, except for 4 moderate reading days in Eugene, Springfield, and Oak Ridge. And there were no unhealthy readings, which is great. And then moving on to complaints. For complaints, most were smoke related at 46 for the month, and the majority was outdoor burning complaints. Onto the table there, you'll see that the outdoor burning leads the way in 2022, with industry as the second largest category of complaints. And then I'm ready to go to enforcement. For enforcement, March was a little bit busier month with a total of 10 actions, 4 new, 5 pending, and 1 closed. And I will go a little bit more detail there. For the new category, there were 2 open burning and then 2 for facilities with air permits. So for the Melvin Rorick is one of the open burning ones. It's closed. And well, okay, thank you. And then for Kingsford, it's actually a Title V facility with an opacity exceedance and more of a paperwork violation, but they also had on notification, but then they also had an opacity exceedance that normally does not occur at the plant. And so initial action's been taken and the final action is, subsequent action is pending. So I won't go into any more details there. Moving on to the next open burn was Thomas Hulsing, and an outdoor burning responsible for the outdoor burn POW, and initial action has been taken and a subsequent action has been taken for notice of compliance with civil penalty, and that action resolution is still pending. And then for FPG Oregon, which is a crematory, they didn't maintain continuous monitoring data for the final afterburner chamber and the exit temperature for all crematory incinerators at the facility. So a notice of non-compliance has been issued and it's still pending.
Steve?
Then, yes.
Quick question, if I may. Where is the Willamette Valley Crematory located exactly? They're in South Eugene, correct?
I'm pretty sure you're correct, but I have to refer to who do I have on here to help you answer that question.
I thought they're out West Eugene, Matt, maybe? I believe.
Because there's one at Wayne Morse Park, and I just wanted to see if this is the one. So clarification of exactly where these violators are located would be helpful for future reports, please.
Okay. Okay. I'll try to do that. Thank you. And if we can find the answer to your question right there, we'll put it in the chat or at least circle back around.
Steve, if I may, that's the crematory that's off of South Danabo and West 11th Avenue over on the west side of town. I don't know the precise address, but that's the facility.
All right. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
Okay, then moving on to the actions performed previously. And previous case that's now closed. This is Jasper Wood Products. And so I don't know the exact address, but it's one of our permanent facilities. And they did some construction of a portable natural gas fire boiler, and they failed to submit notice and obtain approval from LRAPA prior to the construction installation. And they also did some installed some equipment associated with their veneer manufacturing. And they, again, did not notify us of that before they actually did the work. And they are referenced, they're a Title V facility as well. So that case has been closed. They've paid the penalty. Any questions there from anyone there before I move on? Okay. Moving on to pending enforcement actions. They're still pending. We had 2 air permitted facilities and 3 open burning. So Oregon Industrial Lumber Products is one of our permitted facilities, and they have an issue with their wood fire boiler that tends to create ash fallout on the residents. And so they are working diligently to try to get this corrected. Some of it is materials availability and getting them delivered, and then installation. So just like everyone else has had some issues with COVID, so has this opportunity to correct this pollution issue. The resolution is still pending. So until that work is completed, the resolution won't be completed. Moving on to a open burning one. This is Daniel Basaraba. This one, initial action has been taken for outdoor burning. It was issued back in November of last year. The subsequent action is still pending on this one. We've seeked, I think I mentioned the last board meeting that we had, we've seeked legal counsel on this to be able to proceed. And then the next one, Lance Bonar in Crestwell. Open burning violation and both a notice of non-compliance and a notice of compliance with penalty has been issued for $1,100, and that resolution is pending. And then a second one from Lance Bonar for a different violation is of open burning has been issued in February of this year, and then subsequent action was taken with a notice of compliance with penalty, non-compliance with penalty with $1,900, and the resolution is still pending. Those two violations are ongoing. And then the last one I have here is Roseboro Company, another one of our permanent facilities. And I don't see an address on here to be able to tell you exactly where that one is. And the initial action was taken with notice of non-compliance, and that issue is still pending when it comes to the opacity limit violation of 20% for their boiler number 3.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
Howard's got his hand up. Howard, do you want to go ahead and ask a question?
Yeah, I was curious about Oregon Industrial Lumber. It's been going on for a long time. Are they being allowed to continue to operate under their existing condition, or what's being done to mitigate their pollution problem with deposition of ash?
So let me see here. I may need, see who's on the call here. I may need to get some permitting help and compliance help from staff on that one.
Well, if there's no one available now, that's fine. But if we could follow up, I'm just curious.
Yeah, we can do that. I don't have that detail for you today, Howard. I'm sorry.
Okay, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Lance Bonner one and was caught less than a week later doing virtually the same thing. And I'm trying to remember on the matrix, I know if somebody signs the "my bad, I won't do it again," that later their options for a reduction are less likely. I'm just kind of wondering in this situation, it seems pretty blatant here, and I'm hoping there's not going to be reductions in these fines, is I guess what I'm, this is pretty egregious as far as it looks. And I guess I'd love your feedback on that.
So because these are pending, I can only go into so much detail, but that is one observation that is taken into account. If you haven't closed one from a previous year and then you're already into the new year, another one's taking place, that gives you a pretty good indication that things aren't being negotiated where they need to be, and therefore you're not able to come to closure. And so, yes, it is a repeat offense when it comes to this individual. And as soon as we have more information to share, we will actually share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Good question. And I actually want to jump on it just a little bit, Steve, along with what Mike is saying. It seems as though maybe we could hold that second violation in abeyance until we get a determination and adjudication on the first case. And then based on that adjudication, for like a guilty verdict, so to speak, then you can move forward with plenty of meat to address the second case and add some more punitive measures that could be justified with an previously adjudicated case.
Chair Joe, members of the board, it's exactly one tactic that can be used. As time ticks on with the first offense and then the second offense, they're on two slightly different timelines. There's only a certain amount of time that we will give before we go to the next level of enforcement. In the end, what normally could happen with situations like this is the resolution, they're combined into one enforcement action if it goes to more serious enforcement.
That's true. You can do that as a combination. Howard, do you have a question?
Sorry, I didn't lower my hand.
Okay, no problem. Okay, go ahead and continue, Steve. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. All right. And then I think the Minuteman address posted in the chat on one of the locations someone was asking about. Okay. All right. So then just in total from the enforcement, so we're up to 7 non-compliance warnings and 5 notices of civil penalties for the year. And I was going to pause there and have Travis talk about public affairs monthly summary before I go to the rest of the report.
Sure, Steve, let me get to the right page. Sorry about jumping about there.
Okay.
So from a smoke management perspective, Homewood heating season is essentially over at this point in time, though the recent weather that we've had over the last couple of days has kind of created some inversions. We're watching that carefully each morning to see if there's any need for any yellow or red Homewood heating days. But getting closer to summer means that we're gearing up for wildfire activities. So touching base with DEQ and local partners to prepare for smoke messaging whenever smoke intrusions happen from local or faraway fires. We did finish that ArcGIS story map, which was published in February of 2022. We've had some updates to it that have occurred since then. LRAPA did participate with the Lane County Pollution Prevention Coalition that took place March 11th to the 13th. We had some information there on display for those who attended that booth. There was a few public meetings that LRAPA participated in throughout March, the first being the Springfield City Council meeting. We did participate at a Whitaker Community Council Neighborhood Association in preparation for some outreach and information sharing with that neighborhood association, and then presented at the Active Bethel Neighborhood Association on March 17th, which was a DEQ meeting, but that was discussing and sharing soil sampling results taken from residential properties near DEQ. And that's the public affairs portion.
Thank you, Travis. If you can go back to the asbestos table, I can continue on. So with asbestos, there were received 35 notices of asbestos removal projects, none of which were schools this time. And so we're still well above our inspection quota that we need to meet each year at 15%. And so we're doing a good job there. From a permitting perspective, permit Title V and ACDP, we have so far to date 1 Title V issued and 18 ACDP permits for a total of 19. And Travis, let's see, bring this back, continue on. Past year section, keep going. And then we're leads us here to this agenda items here. You see what we've done today for April and what's on the horizon for May. We hope to be able to adopt the budget with the board at the public hearing for the budget next month. And we hope to have the dashboard report update ready for you to go. And then we scroll down to, let's see, we're at the, well, I'm looking for the, it's on the agenda item rather. That's it for the director's report. There's one agenda item left, and I'll pause there for the board.
Okay, Janine, go ahead.
I had a question for Travis. and this kind of came up from the budget committee meeting, but are we working with University of Oregon for the games coming up and having air quality monitoring at Hayward Field and or other locations in the event of wildfire smoke, or are they doing that third party?
So I can start unless Travis, you know what the answer is. But we have had at least one conversation with Oregon, and they have indicated that they may want us to set up a monitor. I know that Lance actually talked to these people directly. So if Lance, if you're on, if you wanted to add any more to that.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've had discussions with them, and they do have some of their own monitoring that they use at other events similar to this one. And but it's been a while since they circled back with us to get support from us. We've offered that support and have provided it in the past, but the last I talked to them, they had kind of their own third-party monitoring that they were planning on doing, and then we of course would support them however we can.
Thank you, Lance. Howard, do you have a question?
Yeah, Director Steve, are there any updates on J.H. Baxter, and in particular, are there any activities going on at that facility that I know they're not operational, but are there any activities that are resulting in fugitive emissions from cleanup or emptying of tanks or those kind of things?
So I can give you a brief, Chair Joe, members of the board, Howard, I can give you a brief update that, there from an air emission standpoint, there's very little operations going on there that would contribute to air emissions. They still have the ability to run their lumber drying operation, but they're not treating any lumber with any kind of preservatives like they did in the past. And so up until now, they haven't been running their retort process to actually impregnate the wood with the chemicals they use to preserve. And so they are still having a skeleton crew, people there. They're still trying to sell off their assets. More than what's going on, anything else is the activities associated with DEQ's requirements when it comes to stormwater, the stormwater treatment, and the how they're handling their hazardous waste. Their permit is still valid when it comes to the air quality permit, however, but they're not running the equipment that was causing most of the emissions that had odors associated with them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Go ahead and proceed, Steve, unless you were finished, one of the two.
Chair Joe, I believe I'm finished with my presentation part unless there's more questions.
Travis has guts to hand up.
Yeah, Chair Joe, members of the board, I apologize. The PR portion of that director's report wasn't entirely complete with the update that should have been on there. So I apologize for that. I just want to go into a little bit more details that I left out from the PR portion, which was took me off for a second. But something else that occurred throughout March was the Oak Ridge Westford Fire Safe Council kickoff meeting occurred in March. And that's using grant funding from DEQ to do some prescribed burning in and around Oak Ridge to reduce fuels there as a fire defense approach for wildfires. LRAPA is interested, of course, in that from a smoke management perspective, so we're closely involved in that group and those meetings. And then also want to mention that we did apply for the enhanced air quality monitoring for communities grant from the EPA at the end of March, which was discussed in the budget committee earlier today, and that was done in March as well. So those are two updates I just want to share as well.
Thanks, Travis.
So
Any other? Oh, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, Chair Joe, that concludes the director's report, and all that's left on the agenda is the a further discussion point.
Correct. So I'm moving to the next agenda item. Number 8 is for us, the board, to discuss the process of Steve's evaluation. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for folks of what their expectations are and perhaps ideas on how to move forward with that process, either the same as in the past or changing that up. Go ahead, Mike.
I would recommend, I believe that we're supposed to approve the form that we use. I know we do that every year with our city managers. Before the meeting, we approve the evaluation form. I would suggest that we approve the current form and go with the same process. It seems like it's been a pretty effective process, but I'm certainly open to any input.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Thanks. Just for clarification, that's the previous process for the previous director thanks. Okay, great. Yeah, I concur with Mike. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel.
Reinventing the wheel. Oh, come on, let's do that. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it. And I concur with both Councillor Keating and Councillor Fleck. Anyone else to the contrary or to add anything? Janine, this is your forte. Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Oh no, this is not my forte, but
Come on.
I will ask the question about, so in the past, we have done a staff survey to kind of include as part of our evaluation. And there's also been, and we haven't done this in a while since I think maybe the CIC kind of helped with this process, but there was a survey that went out to all the permitted industries that was kind of like a, just a customer service satisfaction survey. And I always find something like that to be useful as additional kind of third-party support for us in our director evaluation. So I'm curious about those two pieces of information as inputs to our process.
Thank you, Janine. I see Mike actually nodding his head a little bit. I agree too. If it's not incredibly cumbersome or onerous on staff, I think it would be kind of potentially enlightening, at least give us that public input to see as an agency, because Steve is the face of our agency, how our customers, for lack of better terms, perceive our agency / Mr. Dietrich's guidance of our agency. And I think we can maybe construct some pretty good questions. And I'm not sure the platform potentially could be a survey monkey of some sort. Howard, go ahead.
Well, I don't have any concerns about surveying the regulated community, but if you're going to do that, then it seems like we somehow need to obtain citizen customer input also as to how the affected public, is perceiving the job that LRAPA is doing. And I don't know how you capture that, but if you want a 360-degree view, I think you have to look at not only, permittees, but also just, the public and how they perceive LRAPA is doing and their community relations.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, Howard, but I think maybe that could be like a second step, because we're looking really directly how Steve's performance is. And I'm not so sure if, because it's so deep into the trinary that with the citizens, and I want to see how the citizens view the agency and overall, but maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit washed at that point from the group. I'd be interested to hear from other folks, but I really want to see how folks are perceiving how our director is doing. And I think that the direct contact with the permittees is going to provide probably the best picture for that. But I would still be interested to see how the citizens rate LRAPA, which is basically rating us as well. Unless there's a counter to that, but I would support looking at it as a secondary move to sometime this summer or something like that, to put out a citizen survey that will give us that picture. Okay. All right.
Travis, I'm sorry, I should have raised my hand, but
It's okay. Go ahead, Janine.
Travis, remind me, didn't LRAPA do a pretty well, I don't know what kind of feedback you got or how much diversity in that feedback, but I thought we did do some community surveying. Was it last maybe 6 months ago.
Uh,
And does that offer any insights that Howard's speaking to that would be useful for this conversation, or is that very targeted and a different focus?
That survey we did was last summer. We sent out postcards to all of our, at the time, active Cleaner Oregon facilities in the program to a mile radius around those facilities. And it pointed them to a survey that was, the intent of that wasn't so much for feedback or a level of service representation of LRAPA. It was more to gather interest in community engagement and forms of outreach that would be most effective, such as trying to get a better understanding of if in-person meetings or virtual meetings is more accessible to them, if email notification or physical mailings are more accessible, as well as asking a few questions to better understand their perception of air quality in their neighborhood. So that was that survey that we sent out last year. And LRAPA has yet to publish all of those surveys, but when we get the annual report published for 2021, that information will be included there as an appendix item. But that was the nature of that survey, as opposed to trying to gather a level of satisfaction with LRAPA service to Lane County.
Thank you for reminding me the difference. And then do you have access to, I don't know that you're with LRAPA. The last time we did that kind of more basic customer survey that went out to all the permittees. Is that something that you have? And maybe we could email it out to this group and just see if that would meet folks' needs without a whole lot of extra effort?
Yeah, I have notes from Joe Niehaus, who handled that with the Citizens Advisory Committee. And it was basically a survey monkey that was done. The notes that were left for me from Joe point to a lot of staff intensive effort in trying to keep we don't want to necessarily, we're asking for effort or from feedback from the industry, but then we don't want to necessarily see what that feedback is, because we want to be blind to that feedback from whoever the people filling out the survey is. And that's where the CAC fell into it. But working with the CAC and moving through that process while still trying to remain blind to those answers, from the notes I have from Joe, indicated that it was very staff intensive to accomplish that.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask one more clarifying question, then I'm going to stop asking questions. So are you saying that you couldn't have the Survey Monkey allow for anonymous responses so that people could respond, but not, but in a confidential way, so that you're not in that blind place that you're talking about?
I would think so. That seems to make most logical sense. I'm following.
Yeah, that's
there.
my understanding.
I haven't dived into looking into that closely. It was more from memory of reviewing notes that Joe left behind for me when she left. So I could look into that further to get a better understanding of how it was done in the past and ways we might be able to do it for the future.
Thank you, Travis. So I think for clarification for staff purposes and for giving Steve the ability to move forward and the board to move forward, we've basically, unless I hear objection, have a concurrence that we're going to go with the previous evaluation form and conduct our evaluation similar to what we did last time. I think that the discussion with the surveys, et cetera, may need some more discussion, because I don't necessarily believe we should slow down his evaluation over some procedural processes. Is that a concurrence with the board? I'd like to hear back. I got a thumbs up from Howard. Mike, I got a thumbs up. My thumbs up. How about Matt or Jenna or Janine? You okay with that? Oh,
Yes.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you,
Yes.
Matt. Janine, you're good with that? Move forward.
So I'm a little confused by what you're saying. So are you saying that we're going to hold the evaluation regardless if we have these other inputs from staff or the permitted industries? Or you're just saying, let's continue to move forward with reviewing the form at the next meeting while we continue to work through these other details? I'm sorry, I'm just feeling a little dense here.
Sometimes you just leave me speechless. Okay, so I think, and in a good way, I think what I'm trying to express is moving forward with our evaluation process using the previous form and the previous parameters within that form, and then continue to explore a way in which we can query our permittees. But I want to move, or suggestion we move forward with the evaluation and not slow that process down while we're looking at the potential to ask the permittees their evaluation as well.
Thank you for that clarification. So I guess my slight amendment to that would be, maybe it would make sense at the next meeting for staff to bring back the form that we would be using, because I imagine that the director will be updating that with his specific goals, because I'm pretty sure that we're, ranking based on specific goals each year that he has already developed and identified for himself. So we would look at that form next month and then maybe hear back from staff about the feasibility and the timeliness of trying to accomplish a permittee survey and staff input at that same meeting. Does that, I'm just trying to, and I agree, I'm not trying to slow us down. I believe this is important work, and I'm sure Steve is anxiously awaiting the feedback from the board. So I don't want to deprive him of that honor. Does that work for the rest of the board?
I think that's, in so many words, kind of what I was suggesting as well too, Janine.
Excellent.
Just you put it more eloquently, maybe. So Steve does have his hand up. Go ahead, Steve.
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
So trying to be prepared with what needs to happen and when, and especially for the next board meeting, of course. But in September of last year and January of this year, I provided two separate versions of what I would call goal setting and some type of self-evaluation or self-reporting on the work being done so far. Earlier this month, I crossed the 1-year threshold of being your director, and I am anxious to get the feedback, just like Janine has stated. But the form that I used for the September was the old form that the former director had, with 6 major categories listed. From that, I was instructed to work on taking the goals that I've put forward, which there are now 11 of them for the agency moving forward, and crosswalk those with the agency's mission, which I also supplied that to the board in January. So I'm kind of torn between what I'm supposed to put on the form to begin the process of trying to self-report so you guys can do an evaluation.
Okay. Mike, is that I'm just querying you because you brought up that form part, and your recollection of that is that I think that's still the pattern we want to go. I know it was altered a little bit, and I like the last one. Is that was also what is in your head when you recommended that we use that same format?
So I actually crossed, our city manager ones got general questions. They aren't specific to goals that we set for him. It just covers a broad spectrum of issues related to the city. And so I just had forgotten that it was specific. So I think Janine's correct on this one. We should have Steve prepare, his suggested edits to those goals to bring those forward at the next meeting, and I would say basically that, somewhat align them with the previous format. I mean, I'm pretty easygoing in that regard. I think as long as we get those goals, that cover the basics, the range of duties under his job description, I'm pretty easy person on that one. So I think just bring them forward. I'd say bounce them off of Joe or Janine, and then bring those forward to the board. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Janine, you're good with that too, I assume?
Yeah, I didn't mean to overcomplicate things. For some reason, I thought that we had those generic categories and then there were like specific goals under each of those categories, and that's what we were using too. But you know, it's been a while since I've looked at that form, right?
Yeah.
So,
I don't think, I don't think Janine is going to take a whole lot to, I mean,
Sure.
as far as any change, any much changing, if any, on that last one, we just need to maybe look at it and say, hey, switch it up here and actually give Steve a little bit of leeway as far
Sure.
as how he can, best illustrate what's going on. And I would be looking for some sort of statement of future goals and outcomes like a typical evaluation would have. So,
Sure, I agree.
yeah. Steve, you good with that?
Chair Joe, members of the board, I'll give it my best shot.
All right, well, that's all you can do.
Well, we want it to work for you, right?
Yeah.
Like this is your, we're not trying to box you into an old process that doesn't fit.
Yeah, correct.
Take some leeway.
This is where we're supposed to yell pull? No. All right. I think that covers it. You've got enough information to move forward, Steve. Perfect. So moving on, if anybody doesn't object, moving on to the next agenda item, is there any old business to cover? Okay, seeing none. Any new business to cover? Wow, not seeing anything. So
Chair Joe, this is Matt.
Matt, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just want to circle back to the director's report. Steve, thank you for your flexibility for adding in addresses. There's a couple different reasons why I long for that. The obvious, to know what's happening right in our own backyard. But I think it'd be wholly informative to see a heat map of habitual businesses or individuals who are kind of frequent flyers in regards to being penalized.
Very good. Yes, we'll try to accommodate as much of that as we can.
Thank you.
Yes, and thanks, Matt. I'll circle back even a little bit further back. Sorry, under the director's report, it's been nagging me. In regards to complaints, I think I've mentioned this before. I think if there is, it would make sense to me that if we had complaints, if what were the determination of those complaints, whether they were founded, unfounded, no violation noted, something to show that, because if we get 30 complaints and every single one of them are unfounded, people are going to be looking at the defendant, so to speak, and going, oh my gosh, they must be terrible. And in fact, it could be someone painting a very bad picture being and being unfounded. So if we have, 25 industry complaints, it would be interesting to see whether they're emanating from the same individual that is a habitual complainer, and that's fine if it's founded, but if those complaints are unfounded, I would like to know that information. Yeah, Janine.
So I'm gonna just throw a little flag of concern about, asking for a lot of changes to the director's report and how we present information without kind of like making sure that as an entire board, that's what everybody wants to see, because we're asking for staff time for an administrative report that may or may not be the highest priority for the agency. So maybe this needs to be a new business item and we have a more thorough conversation than at the last 10 minutes of the meeting. And I'm only saying that not because I don't think that issues you're raising are valid, but I'm just being more concerned about staff time and priorities.
Yeah, that's why I kind of waited under the new business part of the meeting. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there, and hopefully the board would concur with that, or at least concur with needing a little bit more of that information broken down if it wasn't extremely onerous on staff. It seems like the information is present and it can be called out fairly easily, seems like.
Chair Joe, members of the board, I think I can pretty easily put the addresses on the enforcement cases, but for rearranging how we present complaints, I have to take a closer look.
Okay, yeah, if you let us know if it's going to take some time that's not justified, then I'm not interested in pushing that forward. I think it's at least worth, as Janine said, at least it's worth just maybe looking at what kind of impact it would be, and if it's not too onerous, etc. All right, awesome. You guys are all awesome. Love meeting with you. So if there isn't any other new business, I guess I'm going to go ahead and adjourn. Everybody be safe, be well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep, well, yep.
I was saying thank you.
Oh, okay. I just heard Joe.
Nope, just a thank you.
Oh, no, what? Now what?
Nope, I'm done. I promise. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Jean.